welcome to the Logic program. We have tonight's guest, Mr. Peter Heller, world-renowned author and environmental reporter. He did a story on me 20 years ago. So, Peter, welcome here.
It's great to be here. We're not in a canoe.
Yeah.
I had read a bunch of James Lee Burke novels about Dave Robichaux, the Cajun detective.
Oh, yeah.
And I loved the books. I'd never been down here before. I live in Denver, Colorado. And I convinced National Geographic to Adventure, their magazine, to do a story about canoeing through the swamps. I just wanted to do that. And I found out it was called the Atchafalaya Basin, where all that country was, all the bayous and everything. And I started making calls. I called the Sierra Club in New Orleans, and they said, "Well, look, if you're gonna canoe through the Atchafalaya Basin, you better talk to Harold Scheffler." And then I called a bunch of other people, and everybody said, "You got to talk to Harold Scheffler." And I said, "Well, who's Harold Scheffler?" And they said, "He's the Cadillac dealer in Lafayette." And I said, "Well, why do I need to talk to him?" And they said, "Well, because this man knows the basin better than just about anybody on the planet." So I had a friend come with me. She'd never been camping and never been in a canoe, and we were going to paddle from Henderson down all the way through the basin to Morgan City for a week. And I called Harold.
Y'all put it in the main river.
And we put it on the main river, and you gave us a canoe and a cooler full of frozen water jugs and speckled trout fillets and Dr. Pepper.
Right. Yeah.
And you gave us a satellite map of the basin, which was, life-saving. And off we went. But what a trip that was. I mean, half the nights we were paddling through flooded forests, and it would get dark, and there was no solid ground to camp on, and we'd keep paddling, and by the headlights, you could see all the alligator eyes. They looked like taillights, a little red. And this poor gal, she just started crying, She was getting bitten by mosquitoes, and it would start pouring rain. But halfway through the trip, you and your wife, Sarah, brought us another cooler, found us on an island camped, and it was one of the best trips of my life. And I came back then to do a story about you for Outside Magazine, because you were such a special person. The Cadillac dealer in Lafayette turned out to be maybe the single most effective and ferocious environmental activist that I had ever met, maybe in the entire country. And so Harold, it'd be really fun tonight to talk about some of the amazing campaigns that you undertook. And I remember as I was researching you and learning about the stuff that you single-handedly almost had accomplished and changed, starting with getting rid of a 100-year-old, $100 million industry in Louisiana,
Yeah.
the shell dredging industry.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The shell dredging industry, they had 7 dredges in Lake Pontchartrain, which were there after the clamshells. And they moved a lot, so they moved at about a mile an hour. And, Lake Pontchartrain is 670 square miles, so the 7 dredges could dredge it up in 18 months. And so they were having a devastating impact on crabbing and fishing and grass beds and, unbelievable how devastating that was. And then on the Central Coast, they were taking out Barry Islands. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which was managed by people here in Lafayette, they let them go on the Shell Keys Wildlife Refuge. And, they could dredge 300 feet from Shell Keys. And of course, they're dredging 40 feet deep, so it wasn't long, and those islands washed into the holes. So anyway,
didn't you become committed to acting on it because you went out fishing one day?
Oh, I went out fishing one day, and it was in the west side of Vermilion Bay, right around Redfish Point. There was a shell bank there. It covered about 1,000 acres, and it was about 2 feet across the top. And it was about, I guess, 10 acres across the top. But you could anchor there and just wade around
Hmm.
and catch speckled trout and
Wow.
flounder and redfish. And,
Beautiful, way out in the bay.
yeah, right. We get there one day, and there's 2 of those giant dredges and about 10 barge loads of those clams.
Ah,
So I thought I was about 9 or 10 years old. I thought, I'll get you bastards one day.
oh man, and you sure did. I mean, nobody could have thought that you could have stopped that. A single person. So what did you do?
Well, we filed suit against, the issue. The state wildlife and fisheries had that as a big revenue item, and they were selling it for 15 cents a yard. Of course, it cost them about $1 a yard, and they were selling it to retail customers or wholesale customers for $10 or $12 a yard.
Mhm.
And they were way underreporting, and they sold the shells in all the way from Florida, Alabama,
Mhm.
Mississippi, all the way into Texas. So shells were cheap, and they were well established in the legislature. In fact, we won the suit. Louisiana Supreme Court ruled in our favor,
Amazing.
and the timing was terrible.
How's that?
Well, it was in May. The Louisiana legislature was in session, and Edwin Edwards signed a bill before 5 o'clock to let them dredge without contract.
Oh, wow. Wow.
When they did it, and the whole goal was, there was an attorney here in Lafayette that wanted to take advantage of unlawful gains with an unlawful contract. But that wouldn't have stopped them, so. Anyway,
But you guys won in court and you shut it down. And
we went through 28 days of trial
wow.
on a water quality complaint,
Wow.
and that shut them down.
Amazing. So you found the
I found the Achilles heel.
Achilles heel, and you're really good at that.
Yeah,
so,
right.
So then you went on and you were very concerned about the black bear in the basin
Yeah.
and in southern Louisiana.
Yeah.
And you hired single-handedly on your own. You hired a biologist
Yeah,
to study and determine that this black bear was indeed a separate species.
Yep.
Subspecies, and then you then with the help of a lawyer, you did something that I don't think any single person has ever done. This is very, very difficult to do. You got the Louisiana black bear listed as an endangered species
Yes,
on the Federal Register.
right.
Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, there's whole huge NGOs, organizations that are trying to do this for species that can't get it done.
They can't get it done.
And then you went ahead and you established some habitat from one corner of the state all the way up from the south to the north,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that this bear could actually survive.
that's right.
So how did you get
Well,
all this done?
The critical habitat came about 12 years later, and I think it was the critical habitat that really got the bear delisted,
Uh-huh.
because that really offended people.
But how did you get it listed in the first place?
we had an annual report under the Federal Register that was necessary, but they didn't have the resources to list it.
Mm.
So we just filed suit. And it's interesting that I think the Justice Department out of Washington ended up with that suit. And I had spent about a week with the guy. The only time the New Orleans district paid legal fees was a NEPA suit we filed on shell dredging.
Uh-huh.
And so anyway, that NEPA suit, when you prevail in court, you end up with legal fees. And the first time it went all the way to the Supreme Court, it went up and it was $560,000.
$560,000?
Yeah.
In legal fees?
In legal fees.
Holy cow.
And then we ended up going a second time to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Wow.
And then it went to $800,000.
Oh, man.
And each time it went up. But so anyway,
Digging a big hole
Yeah.
for that bear.
so the lawyers for the New Orleans district were terribly mishandling that case. And so the Justice Department out of Washington intervened. And then they ended up making the payments, you know.
Wow.
So there's $970,000 it ended up.
Wow. And you took that on just because you believed in the cause and believed that this bear was worth saving. I mean, can you say how many bears were left, they thought?
300.
300 bears out of a...
Yeah. And the scientist I was working with was Ron Nowak, and he couldn't file a petition because he was doing all the research.
Uh-huh.
But he needed 5 male skulls, and he had a hard time getting them.
Oh, wow.
It took him 3 years to get 5 male skulls.
Because there were so few bears.
Yeah.
And to find the...
Yeah.
Wow.
And we had a 9-day season in 11 parishes.
A hunting season
A
for
hunting
the bear.
season, and you
Yeah.
could kill 1 bear.
Wow.
Now, your article posted how many licenses, big game licenses, they sold in Louisiana. It was 168,000,
168,000, there's 300 bears.
300 bear.
This just doesn't seem fair at all. Wow. And then, do you want to talk about a little bit about oil in the basin
Oh,
and
golly.
the swamps? Because in my understanding that some of your legal actions have changed the way some of the biggest multinational corporations in the world, or these oil companies, change the way they have to deal with their produced waters. In other
Yes,
words,
right.
their wastewater
Yeah,
in these swamps, in the basin, in the marshes. That's just a huge win for the environment that you undertook again,
yeah.
almost on your own. Can you talk about how that happened?
Well, we got the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund, an office in New Orleans, and they filed suit against all the major companies. Texaco was the biggest one. They had 800 different discharge points in coastal Louisiana.
Wow.
But all those guys, the ink wasn't dry on the suit, and they were working out a deal with us, you know.
Mm.
Justice Department out of Washington wanted to sit at the table, and we had begged them to take this action for 2 or 3 years. And so told them, hell no, y'all don't, you're not entitled to, and we're going to work out all this. So,
Can you remind me of what they were doing that you wanted to change?
well, when you see when they drill for oil, you end up with maybe 1 barrel per barrel of oil, and so that's produced waters. and of course it's hot.
Yeah,
It's
what's
highly saline,
yeah?
and of course you release that into the normal waters, and it releases the salt. And so we wanted to put them down whole.
Uh-huh.
And so Texaco worked out a 2-year plan that literally took it all out, without shutting in any well.
Really?
Yeah, because they had fields, you see, that had, the fields had lost pressure, so they had holes they could go down.
Oh, I see. So they put it down
Yeah,
those old
yeah.
holes, and
Yeah.
uh-huh. So it was kind of a win for everybody in a way.
Yeah, yeah. The Louisiana legislature gave them till 2050 to resolve this issue.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd still be, but I convinced the National Sierra Club to put an office in New Orleans
Uh-huh.
and sue all these guys.
Oh, wow.
And
And the
Great.
deadline moved up.
yeah, the Green Hill Petroleum is the only one that fought us.
Hmm.
And they were in western Louisiana, they were in the Galveston district,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a well producing 600 barrels a day. They were discharging about 3,000 barrels of highly saline hot water.
Wow. Into these flooded forests, into the swamp, the
No, this
cypress-
was offshore,
offshore, okay.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
but it was in state waters. That judge shut in the well,
Hmm.
made him go out there and could dig up all this salt and all the other shit. That
Wow. Wow, wow,
it
wow.
made the attorneys for Gulf and Exxon look like geniuses.
Because they worked with you.
Yeah.
That's great.
And we had no intention to shut down the industry, but
Wow. Now listen, when we did that canoe trip down the Atchafalaya, through Blue Point Chute, up into the basin, we met some crawfishermen because they were always running by us, and they were curious who this couple was in this canoe. But when we started talking, they all knew you,
oh yeah,
and they all seemed to they just admired the heck out of you, and they were all had huge affection for you. Can you say why? There were some issues about crawfishermen in the basin that were very, very interesting.
well, we handled the Larry Dale case.
And can you tell us, like, they were getting shut out of the bayous that they had traditionally fished? Is
Yeah.
that what was going on?
Yeah, they were in the basin in St. Martin Parish above Duck Lake.
Hmm.
There's one guy, Larry Daigle, and he was fishing about 1,000 nets. He had 3 runs, about 300, and he was fishing on Generate Lumber and Williams, and that ended up in a 5-day trial.
Now wait, but the problem was is that he chained off the bayous that he normally ran up
Yeah,
and where he set his net, so traps. So
so Larry Daigle, we ended up, I got a call from the president of the American Maritime Administration, got the witnesses that really sunk Exxon Valdez, all that issue.
oh,
Their experts came, and Mike Osborne and his buddies were the attorneys doing it pro bono, and the judge was, I don't know if I should even name it, but anyway,
but now what's the so people might ask who don't know anything about federal waters or navigability or anything like that. You might say, okay, this is owned by the timber company or by this big private
Yeah.
landowner.
yeah,
Why can't they chain off a bayou from a fisherman?
they could.
But now, how come they can't get away with it? You wouldn't let them get away with it.
No.
What's the argument?
The argument is these are tidal, their water's used in commerce, and all of that makes it state-owned water bottom.
Okay, so if it's tidally
If it's
influenced,
tidally influenced, the
it's
whole basin is tidally influenced.
it's state.
It's property of the state.
Wow.
It's public waters.
So now by winning that suit, then you made it easier going for all the other crawfishermen
Yeah.
who were having problems with.
Yep, yep.
Amazing. That's amazing. Incredible.
But Larry Dago had 7 charges against him.
Trespassing.
Trespass,
Uh-huh.
criminal trespass.
Oh yeah.
The
Wow.
first one is $500 fine, 6 months in jail. So what do you do with 7 of them? You put the guy in jail for
Yeah.
20 days, 20 years. Which,
Incredible.
I mean, they weren't harming any of that.
Yes.
They were just out there taking crawfish. But the Judge Connery, when I asked for 5 days of trial, I knew I had Exxon Valdez witnesses, and those guys were great because they went out and measured the tidal exchange. They measured the depth of the water. They photographed and took pictures of the fact that crawfishermen were still very much using it.
Right.
So, but Connery called me, I guess, 2 weeks or so after the trial was over, and he says, if I listen to the DA's office, I would think you could go out on that property with the Sunday shoes and not get to the bottom. But if I listen to you guys, he says, I think you could take a crew boat through there. So anyway, he ended up going out there with me. And of course, the opposition had to have their guy there.
Right.
And so you had some.
And you're trying to show that it's navigable.
Yeah,
It's a navigable waterway.
yeah.
All right.
And we had, I guess, you had a deputized young guy with a brand new boat, brand new motor, a little crawfish skiff, about a 20-footer. And so the first thing Connery says, we were in the bayou.
And Conray is who?
He's the judge,
Oh, okay. He's the judge. All right.
John Connery, yeah. So anyway, we ended up going out out to the actual. So he asked the guy. He says, "We're in Bayou Mystic Crew." Well, Mystic Crew is 20 feet deep. You know, it's
Uh-huh.
a big, deep bayou.
Uh-huh.
And he says, I see there's a location right across from us, and I see there's a small bank, but I don't see any small bank. He says, how could they bring a drilling rig up here and all? Oh, he says, oh, well, Judge, that thing's 20 feet deep, you know. Well, he says, who owns it? Oh, we own the bayou.
Uh-uh. No, you don't.
No, you don't. A drilling rig is commerce, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, you've
So,
had,
so anyway, we ended up going into the swamp, and Judge Connery says, "Well, how deep's the water here?" "Oh, Judge, it's 2 or 3 feet deep, you know." Oh, he says, "Let me pull up a, let me." He pulled out a knife, and he went to a willow tree and cut him. And Conway's 6'2", so he pushed his pole to the bottom, and you know, it was he had his hand at the top of the pole, and it was 2 inches above his head. So, of course, the response by the deputy was, "Oh, Judge, you put the pole in your hole in a hole, you know."
right.
Oh no, he says, "I think you could take a crew boat through here."
Yeah.
So the best witnesses. Then he said, "With all these crawfish, they had fresh, you know, the crawfish lines are all marked with tape, and different colored tape. flagging tape,
Right, right, right.
And he says, pull up to one of those right there, and pulled it up. It had fresh bait, and it had giant crawfish in it.
Uh-huh.
And he said, I think these are number ones, and he said, I think they're being sold all the way to France and Belgium.
So there's commerce.
Yeah, it's commerce.
You got navigability, you got
Yeah.
commerce,
And title exchange.
title exchange.
Yeah,
Those guys can fish there whenever they want.
yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
So we were trying to buy 30,000 acres. And after Conway's ruling, which was he's not guilty because he's fishing in the waters of the
Yeah.
nation.
Yeah.
So the attorney for the Corps called me up, and Livingston was in office at the time, and I had gotten, I think it was $40–50 million for it. So they're buying 30,000 acres at $1,500 an acre.
Uh-huh.
And the attorney for the Corps Real Estate called me, and he says, what can you tell me about the Larry Daigle case? And man, I know that case from A to Z. I put together a legal team. I took the judge out there. He says, well, I says, how's that affecting you? And he said, well, we can't buy the waters of the nation.
Yeah.
So how much is Larry Daigle saving the country? $45 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So great. Are there besides the one that we mentioned, the sort of campaigns and the missions that you took on, are there any that you're especially proud of that we haven't mentioned?
Yeah, I got a call from a game warden, Cash Shriver, and he was a young guy, and he was saying we have trouble with paddlefish in the Mermentau.
You had trouble with what?
The paddlefish.
Paddlefish.
Yeah.
Okay.
I says, what's the problem? Well, he says the commercial fishermen from Kentucky or Tennessee are camping in this thing, and this was, he
Are
said,
these in a lake or?
no, they were in the Mermentau River.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
And he says, you got a bunch of paddlefish in White Lake and Grand Lake. That all goes into the Mermentau. And the Mermentau, as like the Calcasieu, is totally unrestricted. Doesn't have any dams on it.
Okay. So it's free.
So the paddlefish
Yeah.
could go all the way up to the headwaters of the Mermentau.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
And they would lay their eggs, and the females, the 7-year-old female carried, she weighed 30 pounds, and a third of her weight was roe.
Wow.
And then so
Amazing.
they were after the roe, which was $50 a pound.
Wow. Huh.
So doing the research and getting it right, I wrote letters to the editors from one end of the state to the other that the paddlefish was being slaughtered.
And getting in danger, they're getting threatened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they lived to be 150 years old.
150 years
Yeah,
old, these
so
fish?
they were-
Wow.
yeah.
Gosh.
So they were not endangered as such, but
They were getting threatened.
they were,
And
yeah.
So
and-
you
and-
wrote
and so
you wrote letters to newspapers all across the
all
state.
across the state. The next day, they had an emergency meeting of the Wildlife and Fisheries Commission to put a 25-year
Moratorium.
moratorium, which they
Wow.
just renewed about 5 years ago.
Wow, amazing.
So-
So you might have, again, single-handedly saved a species. Harold, it's just incredible. I just want to say to anybody who's watching out there that, I've written a lot of environmental stories about a lot of environmental issues and profiled activists like the guy who runs Sea Shepherd. He was the eco-pirate, Paul Watson, very famous for trying to ram the Japanese whaling fleet and save whales. I've written about all these guys. I do not know a single environmentalist who is more active and more effective and ferocious than Harold Scheffler. I mean, it's such an honor to know you and to know your story and to have watched you over the years do this stuff. And it just like most people, most of us in the face of these environmental challenges, which feel like a tsunami. I mean, there's so many coming at us now with the habitat loss and extinct species and all. Species, great extinctions everywhere, climate change, everything else. Most of us just feel overwhelmed and feel powerless. And you somehow get this idea that you could actually change things, just you.
Yeah.
And that you might get some interested people, some other people interested to help you.
Yeah.
And you guys form a team.
Yeah.
And you get it done. It's unbelievable. I mean, I don't know. I think you should write a primer on how to do this stuff because I don't think anybody else really knows. You find the Achilles heel in the legal system, in the bureaucracy, and you figure out whose motive is what, and you go after it and you get it done. And you don't care if it takes a few years.
Right.
You're very patient.
The shell dredging was 9 years.
9 years, but you stopped an industry that would have wrecked
The coast.
the coast.
Yeah.
And it was a 100-year-old industry. It's really remarkable.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like I mean, you're just in your own skin, going through your life, doing what you do. But I don't know that you know how remarkable it is. It's just incredible. Yeah. So thanks. And I think there's a lot of species out there that don't have a voice that if they did, they would be thanking you also. So it's
A
amazing.
bear can't go to court.
No, a bear can't go to court.
Neither could.
Neither could a paddlefish.
No.
Yeah.
Neither. But I was offered $1 million bribe.
Wow.
Yeah. And we had gone to the Coastal Commission about the shell dredging, and we didn't get a vote. I mean, we 17 people on this commission, that we never took advantage of the fact that all these people were on this commission and they never met. But anyway, we forced them into a meeting. And it was amazing how well they were entrenched. Because Wildlife and Fisheries was trying to say it didn't hurt a thing. When a typical dredge put out 250,000 gallons a minute,
Mm-hmm.
and you had 14 of them running. So it was putting out more crud than, all the sewage in Louisiana.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow.
So anyway, but the guy that was the head of the Gulf was a guy named Don Palmore, anyway. But anyway, he was a lobbyist type, very friendly,
Mm.
and he, of course, was always in the legislature making sure their elks didn't get gored. And anyway, he called me and he said, the president of Dravo, which is a big materials company out of
Uh-huh.
Pennsylvania,
Uh-huh.
and an old company. And he said, Dravo, the president of Dravo would like to come meet you. He wants to talk to you.
These guys were buying shells.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were running, I think, 7 dredges. They had, I think, 3 on the Central Coast and 4 in Lake Pontchartrain.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were running 7 dredges in Lake Pontchartrain and 7 on the coast.
Mm.
But anyway, he came to see me, and he said, "We're going to pay you $100,000 a year. We're going to pay 5 years in advance. You'll get a new car every year." And of course, I was selling Cadillacs, so and unlimited expense account.
Oh, yeah.
and it's a 10-year contract.
Uh-huh.
So it doesn't take long for me to figure, well, this is $1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus,
So I told him the story about the Cox and Shell rank, you know. And I was 9 years old when y'all took that out. And I was determined to put you bastards out of business.
amazing. That's truly amazing. So, aside from the environmental, I've gotten to know you over the years, and aside from being a fierce environmentalist, which is rare, I think, for a hunter fisherman, it's usually a different crowd.
Yeah.
You're an amazing storyteller.
Yeah,
And
right.
some of the stories that I've, aside from these cases that I love are the best are you talking about. I mean, I think a lot of your environmental action, I feel, grows from just a pure love of this place that you grew up in and with the people you grew up with. And could you just remind the viewers a little bit about some of the colorful characters that you grew up with that loved the place as much as you did?
What comes to mind is people like Jim Delahousie, and he's Dr. Jim Delahousie, but we fished by pigeon with him, and back when we were in high school and college, and Jim is still living. Lives over there on the by Beulah Rose, but on the river between the I-10 and Beulah Rose, about halfway there. Anyway, he showed us a lot about Aimar Broussard. He was a big deer hunter, and of course, Dad was too. And we joined the Boy Scouts, and we'd learned about map and compass, and Dad had bought us a big Thompson canoe, a 16-foot canoe, which Catherine had redone. It's a beautiful piece of work.
Yeah, I bet.
But he paid $38 for it.
Wow. Was that a canvas covered canoe?
Yeah, canvas covered canoe.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Now they're about $4,000.
Yeah, sure. Huh.
But anyway, we had a dad that loved outdoors, and he showed us how to hunt and camp, and he was a hell of an outdoorsman.
Can you tell us about some of the people that weren't so good about?
Well,
I don't know if you want to mention any names, but you grew up with a lot of guys that used to poach gators and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Lord, yeah.
Some good stories.
I think of
Was it Pee-wee?
Pee-wee. Pee-wee Lyons.
Pee-wee Lyons.
Yeah.
He was a poacher.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
He'd go on the reserve, and it was the Audubon Reserve. It was really not the state reserve.
Uh-huh.
But he was a character.
He'd go at night.
Oh, yeah. We went out one night, and I think it was my brother Bob and I. And, Pee-wee, where are you going to go? Oh, I'm going to go down there where those three bayous come into the canal. And it's about a mile-long canal, right on the Audubon, and it's only a couple of miles from the Audubon camp. But you shot with a .22, and, your lights weren't that bright. All you needed for an alligator was to get their eyes to come back at you, So one night we're out there going, Pee-wee's heading out, and so coming back, and we'd gotten 6 or 7 gators. We'd gone in those ponds on the west side of Shinnery, and they were hard bottom ponds, you could walk in it.
Mm.
And then we'd gotten a bunch of frogs. So about 3 in the morning, we came back and checked on Pee-wee, and so Pee-wee was back there. He'd gotten 8 or 10 alligators, and those days gasoline was 25 cents a gallon, and a quart of oil was $1.
Right.
So you could fill with $2, you could you could fill a 6-gallon tank. So anyway, there's Pee-wee back there, and he's got his lights off, and it was a moonlight night. So we're back there, and boy, here comes, we're in a dead end.
Oh,
And
the channel's a dead end.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and so here comes the game wardens had gotten a new big old Chris Craft, about a 30-foot, with bubble gum machines on the top, a siren running.
Lights,
Yeah,
and
oh yeah,
siren.
siren running and all of that.
And they're coming down.
And they're coming. And said, oh shit, So, Pee-wee, what are we going to do? He says, crank up your motors and don't get close enough to the boat that had them jump in. And when I holler hit it, y'all take off, and you'll be on the left, I'll be on the right. I'm going to go north to the bay, which is about 7 miles. Y'all head south, and you take that first curve. The tide was high. Just go into the Rosos. Just hop the
Just
Rosos.
run right into the cane.
Right into the cane.
Straight on the curve. Just go straight into the cane.
Straight into
All
the
right.
cane.
Okay.
Which, when people are shooting at you, the bullets are whizzing by. Those guys emptied their guns on us,
Wow.
And so, but anyway, and they were stuck in the mud, so it took them a while to come out.
But you guys went right. You did. You went
We
right
were-
through the cane.
And the cane was only about 50 yards. So we ran out of cane, we came crashing down. The gun, the battery, all of that flew.
Oh, because you guys hit it and then you jumped it.
We were way on the top of the
Oh,
cane.
way on top of the cane. Then
And
you
then
came
we
down.
ran out.
Oh. Oh man. So what happened to Pee-wee?
Well, Pee-wee ended up in the bay. And, and of course, we couldn't get the damn boat through the Rosos. So we had to take the motor off and put it on its side.
Oh, right. Pull the boat. Yeah. Wow.
Because there's the cane big as your thumb, and and they really like this, So
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, but 2 weeks later, they caught Pee-wee back in there again. They chased him to the bay, and he ended up. They shot him in the the right rib,
Wow.
right at the right. In fact, the bullet went right into, and then and his left shoulder, and that
Huh.
that didn't touch the bone. But anyway, but it did knock him down to the floor, and the 2 game wardens jumped in the boat with him, and he stabbed him.
Did he kill him?
I don't know. I don't think he killed him, but he ended up with them in his boat, and
And what happened to? So he survived, and what
he
happened?
survived.
Did they put him in jail?
Oh no. Mm.
He was self-defense.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
And there were two game wardens from Florida. They were Audubon Rangers.
Oh, yeah.
So the local sheriff didn't think anything of them.
Oh, man. Well, those were your rough and tumble days, and probably.
So it ended up, it took us the 2 weeks that was the first time we came back, and Pee Wee's boat was cocked at an angle, and it was still daylight when we came. So then we had all this blood in the bottom of the boat, and Pee Wee didn't hunt deer, didn't do anything
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. He didn't shoot a rabbit, no. So wow, and then there's a couple of bullet holes in his boat,
Wow.
and so anyway, Maxie Pierce ran the local restaurant right at the landing, and so let's go see what Maxie has to say about Pee Wee. Pee Wee's in the hospital. He's been shot twice, and he's going to survive. Oh yeah, but he got on the payphone. He called the sheriff to come get these two guys that were still alive,
Oh, yeah.
and he cranked up his old, about a 50 model truck and hauled himself to the hospital.
Drove himself.
Yeah.
Wow. Unbelievable. They don't make them like they used to.
No.
I don't
And
think.
he was the first one to play French Cajun music on national television.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, he was a musician too.
Yeah. He had a
Wow.
little French Cajun band and had 18 children.
Wow. Jeez. Wow. That's amazing.
So,
Incredible.
and then Chester Smith was his hunting buddy, and he and Chester in February, they'd found out where the alligators were laying out in a pond, and they ended up, you couldn't stay in the water for longer than 30 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
but the ponds were about waist deep, and you'd feel around for them with your feet, you know. You typically wear jeans and tennis shoes.
You feel for the alligator?
Yeah,
With your feet.
yeah. And you see they're in hibernation.
Wow.
And you carried a little hand axe in your right hand, and you'd pick them up, and you'd go under there. You grab them by the right front leg, and whack them in the head with an axe. And I caught two of them, and Bob got one, and with Chester and Pee Wee had 30 alligators on the bank.
Unbelievable. Wow. Wow. Crazy.
So tell us about your trip to Churchill.
Oh, well, different topic. This is up north. Last fall, I went up to do a story about this polar bear lodge that they have up there. There's Hudson Bay is ocean, and it comes down. It looks like a big lake, comes down into Ontario, and it's ocean, Hudson Bay, and it's got the Arctic zone comes down around the shore of this thing, and so there's a lot of polar bears on the shore of Hudson Bay, and this lodge was there's 400 miles of coast with one active dirt airstrip in 400 miles. So it's a wilderness area the size of California. It's remarkable. You can't get into it from the ocean because the tidal flats are too shallow and there's no roads. And so there's this one little airstrip. And so the animals in there have mostly never seen people. And there's this one lodge by this airstrip. And I went in to do a story about wolf packs. My friend was a National Geographic photographer, and he was photographing bears, and he noticed these wolves up there that are almost twice as big as Yellowstone wolves. Big wolves, with their shoulder this high. And I guess they're that big because they're actually the only animal on Earth that will predate a polar bear.
Right.
The cubs and old weak ones. So it's a really interesting place to be among wildlife that have never seen people. And I remember we were walking around and we had a female wolf, big, just walk right by my wife and I, and just 6 feet ahead of us, just sniff. It was blowing snow, and its eyes were winced down. It was just sniffing us, and then it just went on. It was just amazing. We had polar bears come walk right across the flats to within 30 feet, and I was really impressed by the place. So I saw the rivers coming into the bay, and I found out that they had never been fished. And so I love to fish, and so last fall I got a story from a magazine called Modern Huntsman, an assignment, and I went up and with this other guy Nolan, we fished these streams that had never been fished before, and we caught brook trout that were this big, and some of these trout are sea-run brook trout. They spend a few years out in the bay and then they come up into the river. And they're very pure string because they never mix with any farmed fish or any hatchery fish. It was very exciting. I mean, we spent, I remember one day we spent 6 hours waiting and didn't even have a drink of water because we were so excited. The water was right in the boat. And, we had polar bears. We had to wait to leave the lodge because a big old polar bear was walking by. And it was very, very, very special. Yeah. So I'd love to go back. Yeah.
And it's $20,000 a day.
No, $20,000 a week to stay at this lodge.
Okay.
Yeah, 15 to 20.
Yeah.
But we got to be able to. It was a magazine story, so we got to go.
Yeah.
It was cool. But anyway.
But y'all were there 2 weeks?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Wow.
It's very, very special. And it was during mid-September during these big bird migrations, so there were thousands and thousands of geese on the grass flats, above the tidal flats, above the ocean. Thousands of snow geese and Canada geese, and there were snowy owls. There were the harriers were migrating through those hawks. The big hawks that flush mice and voles out.
Yeah.
There were Arctic foxes. There were red foxes and moose. It was really unbelievable.
And this is not a fishing camp.
No, not a fishing camp, but maybe we can turn it into a fishing camp.
Yeah, right.
I just got to convince
You had brought your rods?
Yeah, we brought rods,
Yeah.
and it was really, really special. I mean, we were catching 30 fish at a time with these. It's crazy.
Wow.
But anyway, but I kind of want to. I know we only have like 3 minutes left, but I just kind of want to reiterate that. I think it's a really hard time right now. Watching the ecosphere is having such a hard time. The old Earth is really struggling, and I think a lot of us feel overwhelmed. And I think having someone like Harold to remind us that one person,
Can't make a big difference.
person can really make a big difference. And we, all you have to do is decide. All you have to do, geez, all you have to do is decide. Hey, I can do this, and I'm gonna look at it. I'm gonna research it. I'm gonna figure out where to point my attack or my strategy. I'm gonna get other people interested, and it's one step at a time. It is just amazing what one person can do. And we've talked about half a dozen of these projects that you've these missions you've accomplished. But Harold, I known you for over the years, and there's dozens more. They have to do with water. They have to do with water quality. They have to do with air quality. They have to do with other wildlife species. They have to do with water rights and but. And you have a full life otherwise too, right. But you still have managed to get this Scoutmaster, and you were part of a
42 years.
Yep, part of a business. You've family to raise, and yet you could get all this done. And I just think it's really, really remarkable. And I think Lafayette should be very proud. I think Louisiana should be very proud. I think the United States should be very proud to have a man that can get this much done just with his own conviction
Yeah.
and
So-
patience.
We got 1 minute left. Peter, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honor.
Right.
So, great.
So any plans for what you're going to be doing next?
Yeah, I'm gonna start. All I know how to do now is make it all up and write novels. So
Right.
I'm gonna drink a lot of coffee and eat
Right.
ibuprofen and write a novel. Go do a little fishing. So, anyway,
20 seconds.
it's been great. It's fun to come back here too. I love to
Right,
come
yeah,
back.
yeah.
Love coming down. Well, I hope you guys don't have another blizzard. I couldn't believe that. All right.